Yeah, I'm angry. But I can't let that burn this energy I have right now. And that's just staying in tune with the people to see what, to get a gauge on how people are feeling so I can translate that here. And again, this can turn to heaven or hell, depending on what we hear.
You got any sense right now of how you think it's going to turn?
I'm a black man in America, brother. I've seen all the cases. Do I think he's going to get convicted? No.
You do not?
No. I just have yet to find the type of peace in my heart to know there's 12 people, all 12, to say that this person should go to prison for murdering this black man. Badge or not. I haven't seen that yet.
Is that going to change what you're feeling right now? If there is no conviction here, is that going to change how you're feeling right now?
Oh, yeah, I'll be angry, but, it'll be like, it'll be one of those, here we go again, and how do we comport ourselves going forward to figure out how to assuage this pain, right? But we know what's going to happen if it's that verdict. I mean, I think even if it's on the lesser charges of the three, there's going to be an issue, and there should be an issue. I'm not going to judge how people exhibit their pain. I know a lot of folks get upset with what happens when, when riots and protests go on, but not enough people are out here defending the people so we don't have these incidences. I said earlier, I've seen a lot of National Guard down here protecting these buildings. If they protected the people, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation. But that's not what happens. We know the history. If we read a little bit, we know the history. And so we just, we just go with the energy. I mean, I hope that this thing works out the way it should. I mean, we all saw it. We looked into the eyes of, the killer, which has never happened ever in the history of these shootings of black men. That's never happened. And I challenge people to let me know if that is the case. So I think people took that with them, which is why we had this groundswell of support for the black community over the past year plus. Yeah. But again, here we are. And there's a lot of people who are saying, oh, this is wrong, but this square should be packed with millions of people. But some folks, I understand they're too nervous to exhibit their humanity. But hey, here we are,
I think it's interesting, Sean, what you said here, and Brian, what Sean told me about this, because I'm not so smart about abstract art. And he said this could be heaven or hell, depending on what happens in the outcome when we hear this verdict. Sean, thank you. I appreciate your time. So that's just a little bit of the mood. There's people with signs. Somebody just came by to me and said, I'm praying. For this to be okay, to go okay. But as you can see, this crowd continues to grow. It's peaceful. They're chanting various things. Shaq, I think, showed you. There's some law enforcement up there, some state police, and some National Guard. They're all around this place. There has been some activity with the fences that have been remained closed most of the time. They did open up a little while ago, and I saw more police and military vehicles going into this government center. So that's the situation right now. Lots of workers in downtown, Brian, have left. There was what can only be described as an exodus in the last hour. Remember, we're an hour earlier here, so it wasn't the end of the workday. Cars were just streaming out of garages and heading toward the interstates or the suburbs. People are leaving downtown Minneapolis, but a steady crowd is streaming into this courthouse plaza to await the verdict with us all. Brian?
Ali Velshi, thank you. Thank you for finding Sean as well. Sometimes the most acute analysis comes from the thoughtful people on the edge of the crowd looking over it all. Ali Velshi mentioned what he called the exodus leaving the Twin Cities. We're back in court. Let's take the judge.
All rise for the jury. All right, please be seated. Members of the jury, I understand you have a verdict. Members of the jury, I will now read the verdicts as they will appear in the permanent records of the 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota, County of Hennepin, District Court, 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota Plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, Defendant. Verdict, Count 1. Court File Number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to Count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April, 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, juror foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April, 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by jury foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April, 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury foreperson 019. Members of the jury, I'm now going to ask you individually if these are your true and correct verdicts. Please respond yes or no. Juror number 2, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 9, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 19, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 27, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 44, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 52, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 55, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 79, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 85, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 89, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 91, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 92, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Are these your verdicts, so say you one, so say you all?
Yes. Yes.
Members of the jury, I find that the verdicts as read reflect the will of the jury and will be filed accordingly. I have to thank you on behalf of the people of the state of Minnesota for not only jury service, but heavy-duty jury service. What I'm going to ask you to do now is to follow the deputy back into your usual room, and I will join you in a few minutes to answer questions and to advise you further. So, all rise for the jury. All right, be seated. With the guilty verdicts returned, we're going to have Blakely, you may file a written argument as to Blakely factors within 1 week. The court will issue findings on the Blakely factors, the factual findings, 1 week after that. We'll order a PSI immediately returnable in 4 weeks. And we will also have a briefing on, after you get the PSI, 6 weeks from now, and then 8 weeks from now, we will have sentencing. We'll get you the exact dates in a scheduling order. Is there a motion on behalf of the state?
Your Honor, the state would move to have the court revoke the defendant's bail and remand him into custody pending sentencing.
Bail is revoked, bond is discharged, and the defendant is remanded to the custody of the Hennepin County Sheriff. Anything further?
Oh,
All right. Thank you. We're adjourned.
So, counsel,
Nicole Wallace, with the whole world watching, the whole world just got to see that. Derek Chauvin led away in handcuffs. Depending on the disposition of sentencing, Derek Chauvin may not see the light of day again. If you were watching, you heard, there's the graphic, guilty on all charges. Manslaughter 2, the lesser charge, guilty. Murder 3, guilty. Murder 2, felony murder, guilty. 9 minutes and 29 seconds. Prosecution told the jurors, believe your own eyes. Nicole, in this case, this
is going to be interpreted. It's going to be this one bad apple. He got in trouble. Yay, blah, blah, blah. And yet there's still going to be young black men and women across this country being shot today, tomorrow, and 2 weeks from now, because unless we have some radical reform, there's no lesson learned.
And Michael Steele, I'm also thinking of Ali Velsh's friend Sean there, who said it's either going to be heaven or it's going to be hell. Your thoughts to what just transpired in the courthouse?
I have to tell you, when I heard the announcement of the first on this first verdict, I fist pumped. I just had an enormous sense of relief that not the system worked, but that this happened, and it happened at a time that it needed to happen. I understand what my good buddy Jason Johns is saying, but I'm not prepared to just strip it down that bare right now. I think for the family, going back to what I said before, I think for the family, because that's at the end of the day what this is about. It's not what Jason or I or anyone on this set thinks about this moment. It's what this family feels and the sense of relief that they have, the vision that the scene we have right now with black people hugging and understanding what this moment means historically, but also for this family. So I think that we'll have time, and there will be pressure to bear on all the things that Jason just talked about. I think that's why I said this was a crucible moment. It's hot. We are forging a new instrument here of criminal justice and a new instrument on how we move forward as a country on these issues. And black people are at the tip of that spear now. And we're saying we're not having another George Floyd. We watched what happened in the year between George Floyd and just this last week, the black men and the young children who've been killed. That spear now. And we're saying we're not having another George Floyd. We watched what happened in the year between George Floyd and just this last week, the black men and the young children who've been killed. So I think that this crucible moment for us is one in which, from the heat of this, we emerge stronger. We have to, because Jason's absolutely right. This moment can't just be another, okay, well, let's hold our breath and figure out what happens in the next case. We have to take from this how we want this justice system to work for us. And I think that's what this jury is saying is, yeah, we got it. We need this system to work for black men and for black people if it's going to work at all.
Michael Steele, we have turned up the volume on some of these scenes on the streets of Minneapolis. We're also joined by phone by our friend and colleague, Joy Reid. Joy, I don't know if you've heard some of the conversation and reaction so far to Derek Chauvin being found guilty on all 3 charges.
I have. I heard, both Jason and Michael are friends. And listen, my first thoughts as I heard that verdict being read, Nicole, really were for George Floyd's family. You and I both interviewed members of his family, his brother, Phalonis, his daughter, who famously yelled out, "My daddy changed the world." And I think that what just happened today, I take Jason's caveats to heart, but even if it took 10 police officers to bring about a verdict that will bring justice and a sense of peace for this family, I'm good with that. Because the reality is, the verdict today was not just against this police officer. It was against the kind of defense that was mounted for him. It's the same kind of defense that was mounted in the Rodney King case. The black Superman who, no matter how much violence you commit against his body, can raise up, even from the dead, in the case of George Floyd, and pose a threat. The thought of a black man as an inherent threat, a black body as an inherent threat. That's what Derek Chauvin's defense tried to use in his defense. The idea that George Floyd's own life issues were to blame for his death. The fact that he became addicted, like so many Americans who are struggling with addiction, that's the cause of his death. That even a car that we weren't even sure was a gasoline-powered car, being too close to it and trying to hold on to it, that was what was to blame for his death. Everything but the police's action was blamed. And we've seen that defense work from Rodney King, you know, in the 90s, early 1990s, all the way up to today. We've seen every excuse for the killing of black bodies. And the excuse always includes blaming the dead. The fact that that didn't work this time, even if it took all of these other police officers, who, by the way, it's important that they testified, Nicole, because this was police drawing a line, right? This was law enforcement.
That was the point the Rev made. Joy, let me just ask you to stay. Joy, let me ask you to please stay with us. I'm sorry to do this, but I want to bring the Rev into the conversation. He's with George Floyd's brother, Rodney. Rodney, can you tell us what your thoughts are right now? Joy Reid, Brian Williams, and I are all here.
We're here in the family room, and we're going to have a press conference soon. But we just broke down in tears because, you know, all of the work and paid down through the years, all the families. Breonna Taylor's boyfriend is here, and we're going to talk later. But Rodney Floyd, his brother's here. Philonis is on his way from the courthouse. This is a monumental win, but it's only around. The war's not over. We've got a funeral in 2 days. We've got Eric Garner that never got this. We've got Breonna Taylor never got this. But God brought us through, and the first thing we're going to do at the press conference is have prayer and thank God. Rodney, just tell him how you felt. I know you were crying like I was crying.
Yes, I mean, I'm feeling tears of joy, so emotional that no family in history ever got this far. You know, we was able to get a guilty charge on all accounts. You know, we got a chance to go to trial, and they took it all away. So this right here is for everyone that been in this situation. Everybody. We are here. We stand in a unit. Thank you for Sharpton for being right here with us from the very first day until the last. I know we're not done yet. I love it.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rodney, what do you...
We'll be talking at the press conference. All right.
Okay, Rev, you come back at any time.
All right, thank you.
Rodney, thank you for spending some time with us. Thank you. There we go, Brian. The Rev and George Floyd's brother, Rodney, they're getting ready for a press conference, but kind enough to make some time for us.
Indeed, and on our way to Shaquille Brewster, who has been out in that crowd. I noted some networks cut to pictures of the crowd, which everyone's phone now being instantaneously linked. There were celebrations spontaneously, starting with the first of the 3 guilty counts. And Shaq, to Joy Reid's important point, a series of important points. Part of the relief in the crowd is what they were forced, what they endured, what they were forced to watch during the course of this trial. Turns out it wasn't an exhaust pipe. Turns out it wasn't heart disease. Turns out it wasn't fentanyl. It looks like the cause of death in the eyes of these jurors was Derek Chauvin.
It was murder, according to the jury, and that's something that you heard the people here celebrate almost instantaneously. You see over my shoulder there was a rally that seemed to just wrap up. You saw someone come up with a bullhorn and start chanting, and I don't know if you saw these pictures as the verdict was being read, but you saw the crowd go up to the top of this hill. They had a bullhorn, and people were looking at the trial on their phone, and it was a hush that came over the crowd for just a little bit of time, and you heard someone yell out, "Guilty," and And then you heard cheers. They said it again, guilty. Another round of cheers. People grabbing their phones, people waving them around, chanting all 3 counts. And Raina, if you can come over for a quick second. I saw Raina earlier when we first arrived. Show your sign for us really quickly. And this is a point I think Joy was making, in that it's not just about George Floyd for people who are out here. It's also about Adam Toledo. It's also about Dante Wright, who 10 minutes from here was shot by police. Why are you here today? What were you thinking when you heard the verdict being read?
I was relieved because if we did not get the outcome we did, it would have spiraled out into like fighting every day, showing up here every day till they hear us, because all 3 of them need justice. And that's what George got, and we're going to continue to fight for Dante Wright as well as Adam.
You were expressing to me that you were concerned before the verdict was being read, before you heard that it was a guilty verdict. You had a real concern here. What's the feeling? What's the word to describe your emotions right now?
I was honestly scared, to be honest. I was really scared that it wasn't going to turn out the way it was going to turn out, because I knew that if it wasn't, the people would fight back. We are the voice now. This is revolutionary. This is history. And this is going to be, from now on, there's not going to be a world where the cops don't get arrested, because this matters. They matter. Their life matters. Everybody that got killed by the police deserves justice.
Raina, thank you very much. Thank you for waiting with us. I'll let you get back to your family. I also want to talk right here. What are you thinking now? When you heard the crowd say guilty, what went through your head?
I had such relief as a victim of police brutality at the hands of Minneapolis Police Department in much a similar manner during a wellness check. This was such a moment of vindication of the community getting what it needs. And as an Indigenous person, I know I'm not the greatest affected. And so I really appreciate everything that especially Black women have done to organize and help people show up for this, because it is really, truly so important.
So many people told me about the trauma in the initial video and having to watch that over again, the anxiety of watching the trial and waiting for the verdict. What's the word that you're feeling now? What word would describe your emotions?
I can breathe. I can breathe. I have spent 10 years waiting for some sort of relief from my own trauma, and I feel I got a little bit of healing today.
Where do you think Minneapolis goes from here? You saw the barriers, you saw the barbed wire. Many people said that was provocative. They didn't. The reason why they didn't expect a guilty verdict was because of what you see behind in the background of the shot here. Where do you think Minneapolis goes from here?
I think it's really demonstrative of how afraid the white majority is of people of color in this city, and how different our styles are, and how afraid they are of the confrontational nature of just bringing this to light. Even it's something they're very scared of.
You can breathe now. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate that. And if I can make one big point here, it's that it's not just Black folks here. It's not just white folks. You have a range of people, all different ages. If I can bring in one more gentleman here. You were here when the verdict was read.
Yes.
What are you thinking now?
Well, I'm relieved. I mean, I'm here really just to support Black and brown people. I have a lot of learning to do myself. And so, for myself personally, this has been a wake-up call for the privilege I've had, and I haven't even realized it, and the difficulty for all Black and brown people. So I'm thrilled that justice was served.
You said you now realize your privilege, that the death of George Floyd helped you realize that. What are you going to do with that realization? Where do you take that?
I want to find out. I don't know. I actually Googled it today.
What did you Google?
What can a white person do to help out Black Lives Matter?
What made you do that? What was in your heart that made you do that?
Just an awareness to see that, you know, institutionally and systematically, I've got benefits that other people don't have.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming over. I really appreciate your time. And I think, you know, that really captures the variety of opinions. I'll tell you, on this side, you have people starting to go forward. You see a big media presence, and I think that's something that we have to underscore, the fact that so many people have come here, not just American reporters, people from really all over. You see people, and I'm being separated a little bit, but you hear the celebrations. Guilty, guilty, guilty. You're all right. You're all right. You're seeing now people have taken the streets. It's a celebration, and I told you, it went very quickly from anxiety. It went very quickly from anxiety, from nervous tension to excitement. People had their phones out. People said that they were celebrating what they wanted. They got what they wanted, and that was a guilty verdict of what the jury considered the murder of George Floyd.
Shaquille Brewster, I am so happy, given the alternative, that what you have to cover is a beautiful spring day in the Twin Cities this afternoon, as an exuberant crowd, but certainly a growing and peaceful crowd. Nicole, back over to you.
Yeah, I mean, Joy, I want to pick back up with you, and I want to apologize for cutting you off before. We had the Rev in a very small window there with George Floyd's brother, Rodney. I mean, look, the Shaq Brewster is one of the all-stars of our network, and the profound nature of what he just sort of reported can't be, we can't race past it. The woman saying, you know, I can breathe, and then a white, you know, resident admitting that, you know, I don't know how I can help, but I Googled it. Just talk about the strength of the diversity of this movement in this moment.
It's so important, Nicole, because, I mean, as I was listening to Shaq, who's been brilliant, I 100% agree with that. And just thinking off the top of my head how many of these cases I could think of: Amadou Diallo, Patrick Dorsman, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, Breonna Taylor, Michael Brown, Adam Toledo, Dante Wright, who was also mentioned by one of the young women there. You can go all the way through these cases. I covered the Walter Scott case. It seemed like that was an obvious guilty. The jury hung. And you think about the exhaustion that black folks feel watching people die in some cases on camera, or hearing these stories of people who are killed for nothing, for pittances, or little kids like Adam Toledo. And you do feel like you can't breathe. You feel like you can't get it together. Even, you know, on a journalistic sense, the trauma for me is horrible, but I can only imagine what it is for the families. I can't really imagine. I can't get into their shoes of just how painful it is to lose a loved one for nothing. And I think that what we've seen, the difference between when I started covering Black Lives Matter with Trayvon Martin, which became completely political. As soon as President Obama said, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon Martin. And this was a guy faking being a cop, not even a real cop. When he got off, my kids asked me, why can people just kill us? You know, the question of do our lives matter was something I had to deal with at home. But the difference between Black Lives Matter then and Black Lives Matter now is that there are white people in Black Lives Matter, right? Heather Heyer was in Black Lives Matter and was killed for being a part of Black Lives Matter, a young white woman in Charleston, in Charlottesville, Virginia. And so we're starting to see the integrated movement of people of all races saying, enough. We do not consent to police being free to kill the very people large, paying for the cops, paying for policing, because we're getting the tickets written on us. We're getting pulled over. We're the ones who are subsidizing and funding the killing of our own families. And people of all races are finally saying, this is the line. And as I was saying before we went to the great reporting on the ground there are some police who are saying it too. I know you've talked to a lot of law enforcement folks in the last several weeks. So have I, Nicole. And even law enforcement people that I talk to are saying, we got to draw a line. And 10 police officers drew a line with Derek Chauvin, and they said this is too much. And I think that's important for public policy.
It's been a remarkable 3 weeks. Joy Reid, I know. No, it's been a remarkable 3 weeks. I know you've been covering it. I know you have to go and prepare for your broadcast, but I want to say, along with being one of the most important voices on our network, one of the most important voices right now in this moment. So thank you for carving out some time to be part of this coverage, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you.
Okay, Brian, back to you.
Nicole, I mentioned it in the moment, and we were dealing with the immediate aftermath of hearing guilty, 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 but there was video from inside the courtroom, standard operating procedure. The minute you are convicted, you are handled differently. You are treated differently. And this was Derek Chauvin uncharacteristically putting his hands behind his back, getting handcuffed by a deputy. The whole world, as much as they watched the death of George Floyd, as much as they watched this trial so intently, now the whole world has seen that. the view of Derek Chauvin. We won't see him again until the next court proceeding. There is a matter of aggravating and mitigating circumstances, and as you heard the judge say, we have a 2-month wait now until sentencing. But as we also said in the immediate aftermath of hearing the verdicts, there is every possibility that Chauvin will not see the light of day again, especially the felony murder charge, murder 2, comes with a hefty penalty. But Nicole, I think we're all looking at the same live pictures from 2 different locations in the Twin Cities. The crowd is growing and the crowd is peaceful. They have been blessed with a beautiful afternoon in the Twin Cities where, again, Central Time, it's 4:32 p.m. There is the scene of the crime. There is the scene of the memorial. Cup Foods, the otherwise unremarkable bodega, small neighborhood food store that is now known the world over. Its facade, the surveillance video that we saw shot from across the street, shot from inside, of course, the 9 minutes and 29 seconds that told the story that ended this afternoon, Nicole.
Brian, I want to bring Claire McCaskill back in the conversation, and I want to show you, Claire, it was brief, but we did get to speak to George Floyd's brother, Rodney. Our colleague, the Reverend Al Sharpton, is in their home. Let me just replay some of that sound for you.
I'm feeling tears of joy, so emotional that no family in history ever got this far. You know, we was able to get a guilty charge on all accounts. You know, we got a chance to go to trial, and they took it all away. So this right here is for everyone that been in this situation. Everybody. We are here. We stand in a unit. Thank you for Sharpton for being right here with us from the very first day until the last. I know we're not done yet.
Claire, through no design or desire of their own, America has gotten to know the Floyd family. The president talked about his daughter, who he met the day before the funeral for George Floyd. Just talk about this family and how they have channeled an extraordinary strength during unimaginable grief, and they have been a constant source of calling for peaceful protests and calm in the streets of their hometown.
Well, as this family opened their arms very wide and shared their grief, today they opened their arms wide and had a chance to embrace justice. And that's a very special moment for this family. And we need to remember, and in a nod to Jason and some of the things he said right after the verdict was announced, you know, justice won this battle today. But I do think this trial and everything it represents has made us all realize that this is a war that we are fighting for justice and for equality in our criminal justice system in this country. And there are more battles to be fought and more battles to be won. But today, there was justice. And Brian's right. I think he can get up to 40 years in prison for a murder 2 conviction in Minnesota, if my memory serves me correctly about the Minnesota statutes. So now there'll be pressure on the sentencing and how long will the sentence be. But he was not only convicted of the most serious crime charge, but the lesser included along with it. And I think that was a very important thing to have happen to begin to rebuild the trust, just to begin. I know we're a long way from there, but to begin to rebuild the trust.
And Claire, I just want to tell our viewers what's been on the screen. Anyone who watched all of the days of testimony would recognize George Floyd's girlfriend in the red shirt there. She testified to their struggle with addiction. She was there participating in a prayer service while you were talking. Claire, Jason did sort of set the tone for all these conversations about the work that remains ahead. And I would expect that to be, especially in light of the day, as you're saying, that justice had, that would be some of the substance of the president's remarks. Is that a safe assumption?
I think it is. And there's several messages that go out today. I hope there's a message, and I relate to that white man that we interviewed that said, I didn't realize the kind of privilege I enjoyed until it was laid bare throughout this process. I relate to that, but I do think the message was also sent today to police officers across the country. Yes, you can be convicted of murder, of using your authority in a way that kills people without justification. I think that's also a very important message to go out, because believe me, every police officer in America was watching this trial, and they all heard those verdicts loud and clear.
Paul Butler, I want to bring you back in on that point. The Rev described it as the crumbling of the blue wall. We all sat in some of those days of testimony together. I believe Derek Chauvin's supervising officer, the officer who trained him, gave clear and condemning testimony against Derek Chauvin. Do you think that will have the result that Claire is talking about, that perhaps a police officer would have a little space in their mind where they think twice?
I certainly hope so, Nicole. Trials are imperfect vehicles for social change. That's not what they're designed for. They're about accountability and bringing individuals who have done wrong to justice. But in the eyes of the law, Derek Chauvin is a murderer. And I get what Jason was saying, and this does not answer for Emmett Till or Rodney King or Breonna Taylor, but it's important. It means something.
This is Keith Ellison. This is the Attorney General of Minnesota, former member of Congress, and a very relieved man at this hour.
When I became the lead prosecutor for the case, I asked for time and patience to review the facts, gather evidence, and prosecute for the murder of George Floyd to the fullest extent the law allowed. I want to thank the community for giving us that time and allowing us to do our work. That long, hard, painstaking work has culminated today. I would not call today's verdict justice, however, because justice implies true restoration. But it is accountability, which is the first step towards justice. And now the cause of justice is in your hands. And when I say your hands, I mean the hands of the people of the United States. George Floyd mattered. He was loved by his family and his friends. His death shocked the conscience of our community, our country, the whole world. He was loved by his family and friends. But that isn't why he mattered. He mattered because he was a human being. And there is no way we can turn away from that reality. The people who stopped and raised their voices on May 25th, 2020, were a bouquet of humanity, a phrase I stole from my friend Jerry Blackwell. A bouquet of humanity, old, young, men and women, black and white, a man from the neighborhood just walking to get a drink, a child going to buy a snack with her cousin, an off-duty firefighter on her way to a community garden, brave young women, teenagers, who press record on their cell phones. Why did they stop? They didn't know George Floyd. They didn't know he had a beautiful family. They didn't know he had been a great athlete, and they didn't know he was a proud father or that he had people in his life who loved him. They stopped and raised their voices, and they even challenged authority because they saw his humanity. They stopped and they raised their voices because they knew that what they were seeing was wrong. They didn't need to be medical professionals or experts in the use of force. They knew it was wrong, and they were right. These community members, this bouquet of humanity, did it again in this trial. They performed simple yet profound acts of courage. They told the truth, and they told the whole world the truth about what they saw. They were vindicated by the chief of police, by Minneapolis' longest serving police officer, and by many other police officers
who stepped up and testified as to what they saw and to what they knew. What happened on that street was wrong. We owe it, and we owe our gratitude to fulfilling we owe them our gratitude for fulfilling their civic duty and for their courage in telling the truth. To countless people in Minnesota and across the United States who joined them in peacefully demanding justice for George Floyd, we say, all of us, thank you. In the coming days, more may seek to express themselves again through petition and demonstration. I urge everyone to honor the legacy of George Floyd by doing so calmly, legally, and peacefully. I urge everyone to continue the journey to transformation and justice. It's in your hands now. I also want to address the Floyd family, if I may. Over the last year, the family of George Floyd had to relive again and again the worst day of their lives when they lost their brother, their father, their friend. I'm profoundly grateful to them for giving us the time we needed to prosecute this case. They have shown the world what grace and class and courage really look like. Although a verdict alone cannot end their pain, I hope it's another step on the long path toward healing for them. There's no replacing your beloved Perry, or Floyd, as his friends called him, but he is the one who sparked a worldwide movement, and that's important. We owe our thanks to the men and women of the jury who gave many hours of their time and attention to carefully listening to the evidence, weighing the facts, rendering a verdict. They are regular people from all walks of life, a lot like that bouquet of humanity on that corner on May 25th and in that courtroom. They answered the call, and they served in a landmark trial. They now deserve to return to their lives. If they ask you to respect their privacy, we ask you to honor that request. I want to acknowledge the remarkable team that helped us prosecute the case. We put everything we had into this prosecution. On this case, did we not? We, week after week, committee meeting after committee meeting, this team never let up and it never quit. We fought every day, and we did it together. The Attorney General's office together with the Hennepin County Attorney's office. Thank you, sir. And we did it together. I'm deeply grateful to everyone who worked on the case. Most of these folks will tell you it's a bad idea to put together a team of all Michael Jordans. Nobody would want to pass the ball. This team, that was their true strength, is sharing the load, passing the ball, understanding that all of us together are smarter than any one of us alone. And that worked. Although the verdict has been rendered, this is not the end. In the coming weeks, the court will determine sentencing, and later this summer, we expect to present another case. We will not be talking about that. This verdict reminds us how hard it is to make enduring change. And I just want to finish by sharing some important historical legacy, if you allow me. In 1968, the Kerner Commission was formed to investigate the causes of uprisings across major American cities. And a man named Dr. Kenneth Clark, a famous African-American psychologist who, along with his equally accomplished psychologist wife, Mamie, contributed to compelling research in the Brown versus Board of Education case. And Dr. Clark testified at the Kerner Commission. And I want to quote you what he said. I read that report, the one in the 1919 riot in Chicago, and it was as if I were reading the report of investigating the committee of the Harlem riot in 1935, the report on investigating the Harlem riot in 1943, and the report of the McCone Commission on the Watts riot. I must say again in candor to you, the members of this commission, it's like a kind of an Alice in Wonderland with the same moving picture reshown over and over again, the same analysis, the same recommendation, and the same inaction. Those are the words of Dr. Clark in 1968. Here we are in 2021. Here we are in 2021, still addressing the same problem. Since Dr. Clark testified, we have seen Rodney King, Abner Louima, Oscar Grant, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Freddie Gray, Sandra Bland, Philando Castile, Laquan McDonald, Stephon Clark, Atiana Jefferson, Anton Black, Breonna Taylor, and now Dante Wright and Adam Toledo. This has to end. We need true justice. That's not one case. That is a social transformation that says that nobody's beneath the law and no one is above it. This verdict reminds us that we must make enduring systemic societal change. More than a month ago, months before George Floyd was murdered, the Minnesota Public Safety Commissioner John Harrington and I released the recommendations of our working group on reducing deadly force encounters with law enforcement. What all of us in that working group, including law enforcement, wanted is for everyone to go home safe. Anytime someone doesn't, everyone's lives are changed forever. We need to use this verdict as an inflection point. What if we just prevented the problem instead of having to try these cases? We don't want any more community members dying at the hands of law enforcement and their families' lives ruined. We don't want any more law enforcement members having to face criminal charges and their families' lives ruined. We don't want any more communities torn apart. One way to prevent this is to get into a new relationship where we as a society re-examine the use of force and our old settled assumptions. I'm so proud of Chief Arredondo and the Minneapolis police officers who by their testimony said enough is enough. And another way to prevent it is by acknowledging and lifting up everyone's humanity, helping communities heal, and officers be well. Another way to prevent it is with accountability. Passing laws and instituting policies and training is important, but they must be more than words on paper, and there must be accountability for violating them. With this verdict, we have brought some accountability. Finally, this verdict demands us to never give up the hope that we can make enduring change. Generations of people said